Hello, welcome to a follow up to my teaching on the current season of Nigeria. And in this edition, I'm going to be talking about the end of the house of Saul in Nigeria, the fall and the end of the house of Saul in Nigeria. I'll be sharing something about a biblical model for understanding Nigeria's current season. And in this teaching, I'll be answering 6 questions as we talk about this biblical model for understanding Nigeria's current season. The first question that I want to answer is it important to bother about understanding times and seasons in Nigeria? My answer is yes. There is a season reason for everything that happens. There is a seasons factor for our experiences. We cannot separate, we cannot isolate, we cannot divorce our experiences from the seasons that we go through. The reason for snow is winter. The reason for rain is rainy season. For people who live in Nigeria, when you see dust, it's harmattan. It's cold and it's dusty. It's dry, it's harmattan. We cannot separate our seasons or separate our experiences from the seasons we go through. So there is a seasons factor for everything that is happening in Nigeria, for everything that we're seeing in our country at this time. There is. And the other point is that understanding season is the key to knowing what we ought to do. First Chronicles chapter 12 verse 32 talks about the sons of Issachar who have understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. So understanding times and seasons helps us to know what we ought to do per time. The third thing is that understanding seasons guides us to pray aright. Zechariah chapter 10 verse 1 says, "Ask the Lord for rain in the time of the latter rain." Ask the Lord for rain in the time of the latter rain. Now, that means we need to know the time of rain to be able to ask for rain in the time of rain. If we don't know the time of rain, we can be asking for rain in the time of wind. We can be asking for rain in the time of heat. So it's important that we know the time of rain, then we can ask the Lord for rain in the time of rain. Seasons help our expectations. When we understand seasons, it helps us, it helps our expectations. We can expect certain things to happen at certain times because we know that's their time. You go to a tree. Remember, Jesus went to the fig tree and he was looking to get figs. But the Bible said it was not the time of figs. So when you walk up to a mango and it is mango season, you want to get mango. You want carrot because this is the season for carrots. You want cashew nuts because this is the season. So our seasons shape our expectations and they help us to pray aright. And one of the conditions for getting answers to prayers is praying according to his will. And he's revealed that one of his will is that we need to align prayers to season, know what to ask for things in their time, not out of time. The fourth thing that I'd like to say in answering the first question, why it's important for us to understand times and seasons, is that understanding times and seasons helps us to escape evil surprises. Evil surprises. What do I mean by that? Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 12 says, "For man also does not know his time, like fish taken in a cruel net, like birds caught in a snare. So the sons of men are snared in an evil time when it comes suddenly upon them." Understanding times and seasons helps us to escape evil surprises. Jesus says something in that connection in Matthew chapter 24, verse 43. He said, "But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into." So the reason the man's house was broken into was not just that he wasn't armed. It was that he didn't know the hour when the thief would come. So he was taken unawares. It was an evil surprise. Things just happened suddenly and he wasn't prepared for it. Because when we know times and seasons, we prepare. We run ahead. So if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched. He would have raised alarm. He would have done something to stop the thief from breaking into his house. So that's what understanding times and seasons does. It helps us to prepare, to run ahead of time. Because Noah knew the flood was coming, he built an ark. Joseph knew famine was coming, and so he saved the surplus. The woman of Shunem knew that famine was coming. By the counsel of Elisha, she left her land. She relocated to the land of the Philistines. So understanding times and seasons helps us to escape evil surprises. It helps us to know what we ought to do. When Jesus knew that the time had come for him to depart, the earth, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. That's what Luke 9:51 tells us. So when we understand the time, it helps us to pray aright. It helps us to escape evil surprises, and it helps us to know what we ought to do. Now, the second question that I'd like to answer: is there a biblical model for understanding the current political season in Nigeria? Is there anything that we can find from the Bible? Is there anything? Is there something in the Bible that can help us to understand the season where we are? And of course, in trying to understand Nigeria's season, it means that this can also be useful in understanding the season of other nations, the season, everyone's season. Is there a model in the Bible that can help us to understand the current season of our nation? Again, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Every numbered or dated season has a model or a pattern in the book and chapters of the Bible that correspond to it. I like to say that again. Every dated or numbered season, and all our seasons, all human seasons, are either dated or numbered. Oh, you can say, okay, this month, this is this is 2022, this is 2023, or this is 2024. This is the 6th month. That's a dated. You can say, oh, this is the 69th year, this is the 59th year, this is the 40th year. That's a numbered season. So every numbered or dated season has a pattern or a model in the book and chapters of the Bible that correspond to it. I'm going to explain what that means as we go on. So Nigeria is going through her second 49 years as a nation from independence. Nigeria gained independence in 1960, October 1. And in 2009, she turned 49 years. She ended the first 49 years and began the journey into her second 49 years. Why am I talking about 49 years? I'm not talking about 50 years. I'm not talking about 40 years or 30 years. What am I talking about? Why am I so interested in the 49 years? When God established time, when God created time, he packaged time for man in sets of 7. And if you read the Bible carefully, you see that God, puts things in 7 horns, 7 days, 7 priests, seven, there are a lot of 7s in the Bible, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, so many 7s in the Bible. Oh, dip yourself inside Jordan, Elisha told him, Naaman, do it 7 times. So God packages time in sets of 7s. Genesis 1 tells us about the first week, the week of 7 days, Genesis 1 and 2. The first day, what God did on the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the 6th day, and the 7th day. So a 49-year season is like a week of weeks. It's a prophetic week of weeks. So every 7-year season of a nation is significant. Every 7-year season of an individual, of a family, of an organization is very, very significant. Well, men are more familiar with counting in decades. Oh, yeah, 2nd decade, 3rd decade, 4th decade. That's a strange thing to find in the Bible. God talks about 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. We talk about 10 years, the 1st decade, the 3 decades, the 4th decade, and the 5th decade. So, every 7-year season is very significant, and every 49-year season is very significant. So, Nigeria, since October 2009, Nigeria entered the second 49 years of her nationhood. And this season, this second 49 years, has a pattern in the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible. The second book of the Bible. That's the pattern. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the Exodus pattern or the Exodus model. I'm going to keep that for another time. But I'm just going to be showing, where we are in the Bible concerning Nigeria's current season, where we are now, where we are this year, where we are at this time. So Nigeria is going through her 9th 7 years. October 2022 to October 2023 is the last year in Nigeria's 9th 7 years. This 9th 7 years began October 2016 and will end September 30, 2023. This is Nigeria's 9th 7 years. And this 7-year season has a pattern in the book and chapters of the Bible that correspond to it. So, where is that? First Samuel is the 9th book of the Bible. So the 9th book of the Bible and the 9th chapters of the Bible offer a model or a pattern for Nigeria's 9th 7 years. And it's not just Nigeria's 9th 7 years. It's the 9th 7 years of any nation under the earth, under the sun. Under the sun. So I like to say that again, that every dated or numbered season has a pattern or model in the book and chapters of the Bible that correspond to it. Nations that go through the second 49 years have a book of Exodus problem. They have things you see, the battle for freedom, the battle to have freedom and all that. People battle against oppression. It's there. Every nation going through the 49 years has that battle to fight. So, but we're looking at the current season, the current 7-year season of Nigeria, and we said the pattern or the model for that is the book of First Samuel, the 9th book of the Bible. Other 7-year seasons from October 1, 1960 have their patterns or the model in the book and chapters of the Bible that correspond to them. This is what it means that the first 7 years of Nigeria from 1960 to 1967 had its pattern in the first book of the Bible. In the first book of the Bible. And when you know the first book of the Bible, ended with a man by name Jacob who had 12 sons from 4 women. And that's also, we had a similar thing in Nigeria. About that 7-year season, we had a man by name Yakubu who split the nation into 12 states out of 4 regions. Yes. Now, that may not mean so much to many people, but that's a lot. That's what a pattern. You see a pattern. Say, okay, oh, this is what happened here. Other nations may see this pattern in other ways, but this is one thing we see about our nation. It was a 7-year season that ended with disaster, deaths. The first book of the Bible ended with in a coffin in Egypt. Deaths, the 1966 deaths, then 1967, the Civil War began. The second 7 years was a book of Exodus season. Exodus was, as a book, is where Israel began to demand for freedom. Thus says the Lord, let my people go. And in our second 7 years, Nigeria had a let my people go issue. That's when the Nigeria-Biafra civil war happened. We were having a second season issue. The third 7 years of Nigeria was a book of Leviticus season. That was a season when God raised ark bearers, the priesthood in the nation. Many of the big names today were people raised at that time. People raised in the revival of the third 7 years. The fourth 7 years expressed the fourth book of the Bible. That was the season of war against indiscipline, the season of austerity measure. Israel had war against indiscipline and austerity measures in the fourth book of the Bible. War against indiscipline. Korah and Abiram, the ground opened and swallowed them. War against indiscipline. Miriam became leprous. War against indiscipline. Moses, I told you to speak to the rock. You struck the rock. You won't enter there. War against indiscipline. 12 spies were sent to Jericho. They came back with bad reports, and Israel said, we're not going again. God said, okay, you won't go. All of you are going to perish here. At one time he sent fiery serpents for complaining. War against indiscipline. In the fifth 7 years of our nation, we're going through the book of Deuteronomy season. And it was supposed to be a season of plenty. It was supposed to be serious inflation. Money was everywhere. You couldn't buy anything with it. I had a structural adjustment program, SAP. It looked like things were okay. It was a season. God said, if you obey my word, I will bless you. If you don't obey, I curse you. You are cursed. The law was strong. The law was strong in the fifth book of the Bible. The sixth book of the Bible, the 7 years of our nation express the sixth book of the Bible, and that's the season of, well, I just say that's the season when Nigeria moved into the Canaan land of democracy. The 7 years. In that season, Nigeria had a president by name Matthew. And the 40th year of Nigeria, of the 40th book of the Bible is called Matthew. When we turned 40 and entered the New Testament side of our history, as it were, we also had a president whose name was Matthew. Well, that again may not mean so much, but, well, if you walk with God, you don't take things for granted. The 7 years was a book of Ruth season. The 7 years was a book of Ruth season. In that season, a man who was a deputy governor became a governor, moved from becoming a governor and became a vice president of a nation. Good luck, Jonathan. In the 7 years of our nation, the 7 years of our nation, we began to experience a crisis of disunity, that even the president and the vice president were not together. The president and the National Assembly were not together. In the 7th book of the Bible says, in those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Can you imagine? President and vice president were not together, and the presidency and the National Assembly were not together. Everybody just did what was okay to him. It was in this season that Musa Omar Yar'Adua and Goodluck Jonathan came into power and spilled into the 7 years. The 7 years of our nation was a book of Ruth season. We lost a president in office. Died natural death. The 7 years was a season of disaster. That's when Boko Haram rose in the land. You remember that in the 8th book of the Bible, Elimelech and his family relocated to Moab, and that relocation did not favor the family. But that's also how Ruth, one who should not be part of Israel, became part of Israel. And Ruth entered. Good luck, Jonathan was like a Ruth. He was like Ruth in Nigeria. Ruth, from a minority, would never have won presidential election just like that. But providence pushed him forward. And in the 7 years, he was like Ruth, who prospered through misfortunes. That's how the hand of God had been in our nation. And we're getting to something I'd like you to just follow through to get this. We're tracing this history so that it's important. It's difficult for me to just come and say, oh, the 7 years of Nigeria has a pattern in the 9th book of the Bible. So we need to see how these things are played out in our country. And that makes some sense. It's not going to make everybody believe it, but at least you can see how these things have played out in our nation. So, the 7 years is a root season. And in the 51st year of our nation, 2011, we had Ebele become president. What does Psalm 51 say? Have mercy on me. The 51st is a season of mercy. Have mercy on me, O Lord, Psalm 51 says. And we have a man, Ebele, Mercy, who was sitting as president of this nation. So within the 7 years, the Boko Haram rose. And before the end of the 7 years, the agitation for change came. We began to desire change. But Nigeria was already in trouble because of Boko Haram and insurgency, abductions were happening and all that. Within this season, the Chibok girls were abducted and all that, was happening in our land. All right. So you will see that since, that's how the 7 years now has its pattern in the 9th book of the Bible. So you will see that since 1960, Nigeria has journeyed prophetically from the book of Genesis to where we are today, the book of 1 Samuel. From the first book of the Bible to the 9th book of the Bible. Okay. If it is true that we are currently in the 9th book of the Bible, we should be able to tell where we are. Where are we in the 9th book of the Bible? Are we in chapter 1 or we're in chapter 2 or in chapter 3 or chapter 4? Where are we in the 9th book of the Bible? Between 2016 and 2017, Nigeria walked through the first 6 chapters of the first 5 chapters of 1 Samuel. This was the season of absentee leadership. We had a president, but everyone wondered, what's happened to the president? Where is our president? Because of the health condition of our president that made him travel often outside the country for health reasons. So there was a president, but his presence was not there. And this raised much concern because he would travel and stay often more than it was planned for him to be away. So that's what you had in the first 5 chapters of the house of 1 Samuel. Eli was there, but he was an absentee leader. The administration of Buhari also, the Buhari administration also had a posture of being an anti-corruption government, but there were also questions about corruption in the house. People questioned it. People wrote about these things. What about the corruption in the house? That's what was happening in the days of Eli. Eli seemed to be a good man, but his children were corrupt. His children were corrupt. They were evil. So people worried about the cabal, the so-called cabal, the people who were around the president, who were calling the shots. What's happening? And president seemed powerless. He couldn't do anything about these ones. So in that season, we were going through 1 Samuel 1 to 5. Within 2017 to 2018, we were in 1 Samuel chapter 6 to 10. That's our 57th year as a nation. 1 Samuel chapter 6 to 10. That was a book of Philemon season also, a book of Philemon year. Within this season, the agitation for change. We want change. We want change. We want change. Because in 1 Samuel chapter 8, Israel said, no, we want change, we want change, we want change. No, that's our 58th year. Yeah, that's our 58th year. In the 59th year, from 2018 to 2019, the change came. General Buhari was re-elected as a change we were asking for. So that was a 1 Samuel chapter 11 to 15 season. That was also the worst year for the administration. Remember, God had to judge Saul and said, you will no longer be king because you are harboring you spared the Amalekites. The things that God would have the president and his administration to do to really fight corruption and deal with corruption, it looked like that administration was not doing it. And it was in the 59th year of Nigeria that it would be like the Lord wrote over this administration a cupboard. I speak prophetically the things that I'm speaking. I'm not a politician. I'm a citizen of this nation, but I'm not a politician. I speak as God's messenger and as God's voice. So, in the 60th year of our nation, that was a COVID year, from October 2019 to October 2020, then the trouble began to happen. The Goliaths began to fall. That was when certain men, Nigeria lost men, especially in 2020. And some of these people were people very close to the power. The Goliaths that nobody could touch began to go down. Not by the hand of man. Between 2020 and 2021, we were in 1 Samuel chapter 20 to 23. Then the search for David began. The search for David began. And I will just leave it at that. The search for David. The search for David began. Many complained, we are being haunted because we are in the opposition, because we are not part of the ruling party. We are being haunted, we are being victimized, and all that. 2021 to 2022, October, we were in a 1 Samuel 24 to 26 season. The seeds of progress began to hide. The seeds of progress began to hide. At this time, the consciousness of a David began to come. The church began to pray for David. Years before this time, began to pray for David. And you know, David became popular in the 9th book of the Bible. So it's not accidental that in the 7 years of this nation, the consciousness about a David kind of leader, the quest for a David kind of leader became the order of the day. People wanted, everyone were talking about David in Nigeria. I even wrote a book, From Hannah to David, because the expectation of a David type leader, was just there. People prayed that David will come. And maybe many didn't, we just desired David, but it's there because we were going through we were taking a journey through the 9th book of the Bible, because this is the 7 years of our nationhood. So the quest, the desire for David, the prayer for David, all kinds of prayers began to go. We're expecting a David, and all that. And not many people will understand this is what was playing out. We were taking a prophetic journey through the 9th book of the Bible. Then from October 2022 to October 2023, Nigeria came into 1 Samuel chapter 28 to chapter 31. This is the last year in our 7 years. So we're going through the last 4 chapters of the 9th book of the Bible. And in this section, you have the preparation for the last war of the season. And we are now in the season of the last battle of our 7 years. When you read the 9th book of the Bible, 9th book and 9 chapters of the Bible, you will see that it's a season of battles. It's a season of battles. Esther chapter 9, battle. The Jews and those who wanted to kill them. Acts of Apostles chapter 9, the church and Saul of Tarsus. Judges chapter 9, Abimelech killed his brothers. 2 Kings chapter 9, Jehu is anointed king and he threw down Jezebel. So the 9th book, the 9th season is a season of leadership change. When you read the Bible, you see that. The 9th chapter of Genesis was the last time you have an active mention of Noah. After that chapter, in that chapter, he handed over to his sons. It's a time to make a leadership change. Season for a change of God. So Israel said to Samuel, we want a king. We want to be like other nations. Make us a king. The first king was presented to Samuel in the 9th chapter of the 9th book of the Bible. Jehu was anointed king in the 9th chapter of 2 Kings. In the 9th chapter of Acts, a leader, an unconventional leader moved in. Saul of Tarsus became a follower of Jesus Christ. So one of the things that happens in the 9th season is leadership change. Leadership change. And it's a big issue in this time in our nation. We know we have to have a leadership change. Leadership is an issue. In Judges chapter 9, Jotham, the son of Gideon, told a parable about priests that wanted to appoint a king. We're in that season where we need a king, we need a leader. We want someone who can help us, who can battle insecurity, who can battle the economic woes in our nation. One who can give every Nigerian a sense of belonging, that it doesn't matter where you are, who you are. As long as you are a Nigerian, you are valued, you are important. The ninth season is a time to settle that. So the 7 years of our nation is a very critical season in the history of this nation. It will determine the course of the future of this nation. So in this season there was preparation for war. The Philistines were preparing for war against Israel. By this time, David had defected to the Philistines because he was looking for a way to run away from Saul. Not that he hated Israel. While he was with the Philistines, he was still a true Israelite. An Israelite at heart, with the Philistines, but not with the Philistines. He would follow the Philistines to battle and kill them and bring a report that he really fought Israel. So the king of the Philistines, Achish, loved him. He trusted him. It was only God that protected David, because in that double life. So by this time also, Saul had lost touch with God. God was no longer with him. He couldn't access God. He couldn't reach God. He wanted to hear the voice of God. He couldn't. So he resorted to consulting a witch to help him. How will this battle turn out? Get Samuel to talk to me. Get Samuel to talk to me. So you have 4 major actors in this section of 1 Samuel. You have the Philistines, you have David, you have Saul, and you have the Amalekites. So in this war, the king of the Philistines wanted David to go. Say, you my man, we're going to go to war, and I need you to go with me. And David was saying, yes, we're going to war. You will know how much I can do. Then the lords of the Philistines said, no, we're not going to go with this man. We don't trust him. Just somehow their eyes opened to know who David was, that although he's here or he's not one of us, we can't trust him. We cannot do anything with him. No, we don't need him in this party. We can't give him chance in this party. He's not part of what we're doing. He's a different person. So please don't let him join us in this battle. Don't let him. So the lords of the Philistines would not let David go with that battle. And that battle, the battle of this season, is part of, the 2023 election is part of the preparation for this battle. So we are in the last battle, the last battle of the 7 years. That's where we are now. The 2023 election is part of this battle. So the Philistines said to David, no, we don't want you. We're not going to fight together. Just go. We don't want you. We will go by ourselves, because you are going to betray us. We see you're going to betray us. So that's how they kicked David out. When David left and was going to return to his base at Ziklag, where he had a camp with his 600 men, by the time they got there, the Amalekites came. David and his men could no longer recognize their camp. There was no noise. Every place was quiet. What had happened? They saw that their camp had been burnt down. Where are family members? They could not find any family member. The enemies had abducted and taken captive of the family members of David and his men. Took away whatever they could take away and burnt the city. This, I think, is what played out as Nigerians have been talking and, alleging the rigging, the vote stealing, That's like the abduction. That's like the raiding of the camp of David. The Amalekites raided the camp and burnt the city and took away everything. That's what's playing out. So if what's on the news, it's on the news, rigging, they stole the votes, they took the numbers, and this, that, and the other one. So the Amalekites raided the camp, took away whatever they could, and escaped and began to celebrate. Look at the loot. Look at the people. We got the people. We have burnt the camp. The Bible said that the men of David returned. David and his men came back and they wept until there was no more strength in them to weep. There was no more strength in them to weep. No more strength in them to weep. When men are weeping and there is no more strength. So after the 2023 election and the result is announced, many Nigerians are weak, many Nigerians are in tears, many Nigerians are in pains, and don't know what to do. But the Bible said that David, at a point they wanted to stone David, but David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. He became the leader that God made him to be. And he encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And the first thing he did was to say to God, what should we do? Should I pursue this man? Will I overtake them? Should I pursue this man? Will I overtake them? And God said to him, pursue. You will overtake them and you will recover all. So this seems to be what the Lord is saying to the aggrieved party. Pursue. You will overtake. You will recover all. How? This thing is already done. Pursue. You will overtake. You will recover all. Because it was 3 days. 3 days had passed since the camp was raided. But God said, pursue. You will overtake. You will recover all. So David and his men pursued. But at the time of the pursuit, 1/3 of David's men could not go on. They became very weary and they couldn't continue. They couldn't. 1/3 of David's men could not. They became weary. So 400 continued. You see, it was not a time to just sit and cry. It's not a time to even apportion blames to anybody, to blame this or blame that or blame INEC or blame government or blame this and blame that. No, the instruction is clear. Pursue, you will overtake. You will recover all. It was not a time to criticize those who couldn't, continue in the pursuit. They were weak, they were weary. David understood. He said, don't worry. Let the 400 move on. So David and his 400 moved on. And God helped them. God helped them. I say it again. God helped them. One thing happened and led to another and led to another. And they met a young man. I'd like you to read that story in 1 Samuel chapter 30. In fact, read the thing, read from chapter 28 to chapter 31. Eventually, David and his men came to where the Amalekites were jubilating and celebrating and dancing and celebrating their victory, the loot that they got, their prosperity, and how everything has worked out. Can you see? Just in one raid, we have so much now. And they are rejoicing and celebrating and just dancing and feasting. It was in the midst of the feasting that David struck. He recovered all. He recovered all. So let the house of David, let David and his men stay focused. Pursue. You will overtake. You will recover all. Pursue in prayer. Pursue in action. Nothing unlawful. Pursue. You will recover all. Now David recovered all and got back everything, got back family members, got back everything. And he had his own time of celebrating. The one who laughs last, laughs the best. He sent out gifts to men different ways, because the victory of David is the victory of all. The victory of David is the victory of all. He sent gifts to different people. Even those who couldn't pursue with him, he still said, no, everybody gets everything, because the spirit of David is the spirit of equity and justice. These are men. They are not as strong as others, but these are men. These are men. But remember, the conflict with the Amalekites was not the battle. The battle was between the Israelites and the Philistines. So what happened to David was, just like a distraction. The real battle would happen in the 31st chapter. You see, I've answered the questions without really asking them. The first question was, is it important to bother about understanding the times and seasons in Nigeria? And we answered that. Secondly, is there a biblical model for understanding the current political season in Nigeria? Yes, we answered that. And thirdly, we're looking at what is the biblical model for understanding Nigeria's current season. We went into that, and that's the 9th book of the Bible. And then the fourth question is, where can we find Nigeria's current season in the 9th book of the Bible? In 2023, Nigeria is in 1 Samuel chapter 28 to chapter 31. From October 2022 to September 30, 2023. And the fifth question is, what are we supposed to do? David's men were discouraged, but David encouraged himself in the Lord. So what are we supposed to do at this time? Be encouraged. Be in alignment with the will of God. Pursue. Do not despise the weak among you. Do not despise the weak on the way. Fight the enemy and distribute the spoils selflessly. Pursue, overtake, and recover all. But like I said, that's not the end of the battle. That's not the end of the battle. That is not the end of the battle. The real battle with the Philistines still raging. So, how will it all end? How will it all end? Read 1 Samuel chapter 31. That's where the battle took place. The real battle of the season. Whatever happened is a distraction. The Amalekites were not in the picture. The real battle was the battle between the Philistines and the Amalekite and the Israelites. David will not be part of that battle. Saul will go to battle with his sons. Saul will go to war with the Philistines. Saul will die in the battle with his sons. And the Bible tells us the reason: because of his unfaithfulness and for consulting a witch instead of going to God. It will be a fall orchestrated by heaven. I'd like to read this passage, 1 Chronicles chapter 10, as I close. 1 Chronicles chapter 10, so we see exactly what happened. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. Then the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The battle became fierce against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through, lest these uncircumcised men come and abuse me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. And that was how Saul died. Verse 8. So it happened that the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. And they stripped him and took his head and his armor, and sent word throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim the news in the temple of their god idols and among the people. Then they put his armor in the temple of their god. Let's go to verse 13. So Saul died for his unfaithfulness. So Saul died for his unfaithfulness, which he had committed against the Lord. The house of Saul, everything that represents Saul, or everything that expresses Saul in the current dispensation in Nigeria, is coming to an end. So Saul died for his unfaithfulness to God. Every leadership has an assignment from heaven. There is no authority but the one that God. Nobody becomes anything except by God. It doesn't matter what you think about them. It's not just elections. It's not coup that puts people in power. The Bible says God changes times and seasons. He sets up one as leader and he brings down another. Promotion does not come from the west or the east. God is the judge. So there is no authority but of God. That is why those who rule must rule in the fear of God. They must. Saul died for his unfaithfulness, which he had committed against the Lord who made him king, because he did not keep the word of the Lord, and also because he consulted a medium for guidance, but did not inquire of the Lord. Therefore he killed him. Who killed him? God killed him. It wasn't the Philistine. God killed him and turned the kingdom over to David, the son of Jesse. God is the owner. And this is the 24th year of democracy in Nigeria. Psalm 24 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein." This year, God will prove that he owns the earth. No man owns it. He owns the earth. He owns the nation. No man, no tribe, no set of human beings. The earth, the nation is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. So this is where we are. The last battle of the 7 years. Let me say this as I close. Here you have David standing alone. And here are 3 other people. The Philistines rejected him. No, you won't go with us. We don't want you with us. Saul had been looking for a way to kill him. And now the Amalekites raided his camp. So actually David is alone. Just him and his men. But the Lord. So the strength of David is the Lord. So when David says the Lord is my refuge and my strength, the Lord is my shepherd, the Lord is my horn, the lifter up of my head. That is the strength of David. David said, no king is saved by the multitude of his chariots. The strength of David is God. And through the help of God that anointed David, the house of Saul will give way and the kingdom will be turned over to David. Father, in the name of Jesus, establish your word, establish your counsel. You do not need the help of any man to do anything. You are God all by yourself. You can do anything, anytime, anyhow. You are God. In the 9th book of the Bible, you revealed yourself as the Lord of hosts. This name does not appear. It's not used in any book of the Bible until the 9th book. You revealed yourself as the Lord of hosts, the Lord of battles. Fight your battle and glorify your name. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Strengthen your people. Strengthen your purpose in this nation. Let new Nigeria be born. Thank you, Father. In Jesus Christ's name. Amen.